Hi everyone, this is Allison and Lorika, and
Hi.
we're back again with another video. And the topic today is going to be discussing coping strategies for when we were healing cancer, when we were in the midst of our health journey.
Right.
So, did you want to start, Lorika?
Um, sure. So I know we wanted to kind of keep it to our top three, I think is what we talked about. So I'll try to stick with our plan here because there are so many good coping strategies, I think, even though cancer is such a difficult experience. And for me, I think some of my top ones, I don't know if these are my only top ones, but these are the top three that I've thought of to share today. But I think number one for me has been taking action. I know it seems weird for to say taking action is a coping strategy, but I actually think it can be, and it has been for me, and it continues to be for me a coping strategy. So what I mean by that is, not just taking any action like the person that just feels nervous, so they start cleaning their kitchen and keeping busy, not that kind of action, but more taking informed action and taking conscious action. So, really being methodical about what you're choosing, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, how you use your routine to implement a healing strategy, whether that be through food or supplements or whatever you're doing, exercise, whatever you're working on with yourself. So taking action has been really important on my journey, and very empowering, because I feel like if I've been at least doing what I can and all I can, that at least gave me peace of mind that even if it didn't work, even if I didn't make it, or even if I didn't live as long as I hoped to live, that I would at least be doing all I can. And to be honest with you, that still inspires me today. The things I still do to work on my health, and I just, I still feel that, no matter what happens to me in the future, at least I will know that I've done, my very best to take action to live and to live the best I can and to be as healthy as I can with this body that I have. Um, so that's my number one. And number two is kind of a combination of mindset and emotions. So, and really not really controlling the mindset necessarily, but um, shifting the mindset around certain things. So that has been a really big coping mechanism for me, and that's a big one too, to kind of explain. But um, shifting my mindset around food, like how I saw food versus like seeing it as something pleasurable, seeing it more as sustenance. And that sounds like your typical kind of like diet nutrition talk, but it's beyond that. For me, like really seeing food as medicine and seeing it as something that could either be the death of me or actually help cure me, so to speak. um and I use that word, obviously not lightly, but just really that food is information for the body. And so shifting my mind around that, not seeing like the chocolate cake and thinking and feeling like, oh, that looks good and I really want that, but seeing it as what it is, something that I don't want and I don't need, because I have a grander mission, a higher mission, and that's to fill my body with good fuel so that I can live and survive into the future. And so that's, just one little piece of it, but shifting my mindset around disease, around what cancer is, and around the fear of cancer, that to me is the biggest thing of all. All these practical outlooks, around food, around exercise, around the body, around all of that. Those are much easier, but shifting, I think, your mindset around fear of disease, fear of death, those are big things, and those don't come, overnight, or with one affirmation, or with one meditation, or with, one um, period of going within. It happens, through, I think, a longer period of time. And there's lots of tools and techniques you can use for shifting the mindset. And I've used many. I wouldn't say that there's one thing that has really helped me, but I do think that my determination has played a big role in just wanting to recognizing the mindset that was not serving me, whether that's fearing cancer and just fearing death and constantly being in fear and being in anxiety, and just recognizing like, look, this isn't, I'm still breathing the next day, but yet I keep thinking I'm going to die. That day it's like, when you're in that space and you're just in this constant panic, it's not helpful. And so recognizing that, and then kind of using self-talk and different ways to change my thinking patterns. I really like, there's certain things I've really benefited from. So I don't know, I think we're going to talk about a couple of tips at the end now, since I don't want to get too much into it, but yeah, so the mindset. And then similar with emotions, like, not necessarily shifting emotions. I think it's more accepting the emotions, and then understanding the emotions, and having compassion for yourself, and letting yourself release those emotions. So emotional, mental release, I think, and transformation is huge. And so that's my number 2. And my number 3 is, I think, like, this one's more like hard to articulate exactly, but I could just say focusing on positive relationships on every level. So not just positive relationships like you and I, like the people in your life, but a positive relationship with yourself, a positive relationship with nature, with the God of your own understanding, with the universe, with all of that is, in your world and in your existence, and just having a positive like relationship with yourself probably being the most important one of those things. But I think for me too, in conjunction with all of that, focusing on the people that love me and the love I have for those people, like especially my kids, were a huge, positive coping, strategy for me. It's just focusing on the duties that I have as being a mom. And some people might feel burdened by that while they're dealing with their own cancer crisis. But for me, it was like, oh, what a joy. I get to focus on these little people and like their world and their happy little, adventures that they're having. And let me absorb myself in this, and like not necessarily live vicariously through them, but feel that joy of just like enjoying with them and being with them, and get away from that doom and gloom and the dwelling and all the negative, heaviness. And so I think, that I don't underestimate the power of that as a coping mechanism. And it's not one that, I think you would normally think of as a coping mechanism, but I think it was because I used it strategically. Like I identified it, I recognized it while I was doing it. It was like, oh, this is good for me, like to be engaged with this, or even like with my husband, like I decided to take a couple of trips with him that we hadn't, left the kids for that long, or I wouldn't fly on an airplane without them, or like, we decided to do something that was a little more risky for how I would normally behave as a mother of young children. And I just remember being like, I'm just going to have faith that it's all going to be good, because this is important, that I have this adventure, and this might be the last opportunity I have to do this, and I'm going to enjoy it and live, in the moment with this person that I love and that loves me, and just savor this experience regardless of the future. So taking a little more risk too in relationships, and so that you can have new experiences with the people that you love, is all, I think, a part of that, like focusing on positive relationships and building relationships. And yeah, and then again, the communion with yourself is all a part of that, because you have that relationship with yourself that's going to be the most important thing until the end, right? So I think that's been the biggest thing, and continues to be a really important part for me. So what about you?
Wow. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with a lot of the things that you were saying. When you were talking about your kids, I can see how, because children are just so full of joy and, and innocence, and just being able to have that kind of light and positivity around you, I'm sure was really helpful. And then, yeah, the mindset shifting, and that I could agree with that too. And what was the first? Can you recap that?
Taking action. So
taking action. Yeah, I agree with that one too. As far as like just feeling like you're doing everything you can possibly do that's in your power,
right,
and just knowing, and then just letting the rest be what it's going to be.
right.
So, so for me, spending time in nature was huge and still is huge. And ever since I was really young, I've always felt really more myself and just felt very connected when I'm outside. And so that love of nature really became really pronounced in a way, because it was some of the times that I felt the most at peace and the most just myself was honestly just being outside with the trees, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
um, so yeah, lots of walks, outside hikes. At my mom's, I created a medicine wheel out on land, and still working with crystals and stones. And so I would just be out there and just sitting on the ground, and did a lot of earthing.
Mm,
Just being outside, when of course when it wasn't cold, but just have my bare feet on the ground. And
right.
grew a garden, spent a lot of time out there. In the summer, actually, just sunbathing in the nude in my garden, getting all that vitamin D, and just
Right.
um, just just really connecting with nature. So that was huge. And secondly, I would say humor. I've got kind of a silly offbeat sense of humor, so that really came in very handy at times. I got these silly little joke books,
Mm,
and it was like not just jokes, but like little stupid little drawings and just
yeah.
silly stuff like that. And then my cousin would send just funny stuff in my email almost every day. And at one point, when I was towards the end, before they said that cancer was gone, they had actually thought that it was in my lung, because
Mm,
in the beginning they did a scan and they saw a little speck on my lung, and they had me believing that it had metastasized into my lung.
right.
But they couldn't do a biopsy of that until I finished the radiation for everything going on in my pelvic area. So once I got through that, then I went back for another scan. And I just remember waiting for the doctors to come, and I thought they were going to say, "Yep, but you got cancer in your lung," and that would
Mm.
have been more radiation. And anyway, so I was
So
just sitting there in the
scary.
very scary, but I just remember sitting in the waiting room just looking at these just really, really stupid, silly stuff, but just like sitting there and just like laughing. And
Yeah.
and it helped a lot. And then it turns out they came out and they said, "Oh, there's nothing there." And I said, "What do you mean there's nothing there?" They said, "There's nothing on the scan." And I didn't believe them at first. I'm like, "No, no, like it has to be
Right.
like I was so prepared for the worst."
Right.
They were like, "No, there's nothing there." And so I said, "Well, what could it have been?" And they said, "Well, maybe just a little, infectious material in your lung or something like that." So anyway, it was
Well,
just like
that's
this.
good.
It was a huge sigh of relief, because that was the end of it, right
Right.
then and there that day. They're like, "You're free." And of
Yeah.
course, I had to go back and get my checkups and everything. But so that's just a little bit about how humor helped. And then the third thing I would say is and it kind of ties in with the nature, talking about being out in nature.
Right.
For me, meditation, but I'm more of a walking meditation kind of person than a sitting meditation. So for me, my meditation or prayer is usually when I'm out in nature, walking. I just feel really connected and with myself and with the world. And so I guess that kind of ties in as prayer and meditation. But usually, I mean, I do it at home too, but it seems like it's more powerful and more clear when I'm outside.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate
So,
with that.
so yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell, I guess, as far as like the top three for
Yeah.
me.
Okay.
Uh,
Is
so you,
there
oh, go ahead.
when you do your meditations, is there anything like specific that you focus on? Like, do you focus, like, when you're in nature, do you focus on a specific thing when you're doing it, or is it more of just like the connection that you're feeling?
It's kind of it's spontaneous, but like whatever is up for me at the time. If something's
Right.
really weighing really heavily on me, then I'll do more of you know a prayer, to
Right.
help me work through that issue. but I don't know. It's just more of a
It's very
it's
personal, I know. I
it's
just,
hard to explain. It's more like
yeah,
a I mean, I've had very deep mystical experiences out in nature
right.
that like it's hard to put words
I
to,
know. Well, I have too.
but
Yeah, I was just thinking anybody watching might be curious, like, well, what, you know
yeah.
what I mean? Like, what's a, like a walking meditation or something like that? And I know there's lots of different ways to go about it. So,
Well, an example would be like if your mind is chaotic and there's just like all this stuff, going through your head, then I
right.
just go on a really long walk, and by the end of it, everything just seems to be cleared. It's just
Yeah,
as simple as
yeah,
that.
for
Sometimes
sure.
it's not
Yeah,
even
no,
intentional. It's just like I'm gonna go for a walk, and
I
then
totally agree. I think nature is a huge healer. Yeah. That's
absolutely.
so, do you have any tips for anybody, like as far as coping strategies or coping mechanisms, like something you'd recommend for anybody who's like recently diagnosed?
um, well, I mean, I would just, like what we were talking about is, some of it's just part of who we are and our personality. Like for me, like I've always been kind of a nature geek. So I would say, whatever's like part of who you are, that's something that makes you feel relaxed or makes you feel more
Yeah,
yourself or more connected to yourself.
yeah,
Whatever that is. I'm not sure what, it could be watching baseball. I mean,
right,
I mean, I have
right,
a friend who watches baseball because it just makes him relax. So, I mean,
yeah.
it sounds silly, but it's not. I mean, you just,
No, yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense, because everybody is different. Like my husband loves to watch football, it's like everybody has their own. But like for me, when I hear the voices, it feels like it's like
right.
almost reminds me of like auction voices sometimes the way the announcers
Oh,
are.
yeah.
So it's like it's not relaxing at all for me, but
Right,
for him it's very
right.
relaxing. So yeah, I agree. And
To kind of help you get in the zone, like to help you get out of
right.
your, whatever, fear, panic,
I
anxiety,
totally
whatever.
agree. I totally agree with that. It's like whatever feels good, do that. Like whatever
Hmm.
feels good and helps you relax and feel joyful and feel good, do
Right.
that. I agree. And then I think I'm going to add a little spin to that though
Hmm.
and say on the flip side, like, um, there is value, not in, I'm not going to say in being uncomfortable, but sometimes there's certain feelings that you might not want to feel. And so like recognizing when maybe you have to kind of go through those feelings to come out the other side. So maybe doing some things that might feel a little
Right.
uncomfortable in
Right.
order to get through those emotions. It's kind of the opposite because on one hand I totally agree that like
Right.
humor and finding joy and doing all these things like can be so healing and so powerful for coping. And then it's like on the other hand, sometimes I think there's a time to kind of like, just like when you're a kid and you think there's a monster in the closet, like open the closet
Right.
door and go
Right.
inside and then shut the door and be in there in the darkness
Right.
and see how you feel, for a little while.
Right.
So I think there's some
Yeah.
value to that, to kind of finding that dark place and that heavy place and working your way through it, obviously, safely. And if you're feeling, too dark or like you're feeling suicidal or something, obviously you need help, but don't don't go there, don't go there on your own if that's the case. But I do think that if you're able to recognize that for yourself and go through kind of like the darkness, that you'll be able to have more, joy on the back end of that, and then understand better, what you need in order to cope and in order to get through it and in order to heal even.
Right.
Because I think only we know that. It's like such a personal thing.
Right. I'm glad you added that because when I was saying, go watch baseball or whatever, I mean, there's a certain element of like escapism or something. You
Right.
don't want to just totally just try to escape from what's going on, but sometimes
Yeah.
you need to though. Sometimes you need
Isn't it interesting? Yeah,
to
it's such a fine line to me. I find that
yeah.
so fascinating because it's so like that's such a really good point I think to make, and it's such a profound, like it seems so simple, but it really is true that there's one element of the same. It's just like maybe too like a certain medicine might help you in a certain dosage, but if you get too much, it might not, the same medicine might hurt you, right? It's
Right.
kind of like that, the way I see it, like that the laughter is so good, and the even my comment about taking action, like I was saying, it's like it's not just being busy for the sake of being busy. I know lots of people that will keep busy to avoid their problems or avoid thinking about their illness or avoid thinking about death or anything like that. And that's, I think, not what it's about. It's about taking action that's very strategic. And the same thing with the laughing and the joy. It's about being aware, like I'm choosing this right now and I'm going into this feeling place that feels good because this is healing for me, you know what I mean? And not
Right.
just like I'm running from my problems and I'm gonna, not face them ever. So I think we have to do both. We have to
Yeah.
face the situation, but also find the joy, and maybe a little escape here and there isn't a bad thing either, because it kind of helps us exist on a different realm, so to speak. And that, I think, is important because it helps us know better like who we truly are, helps us get in touch with ourselves, aside from whatever's happening to us, aside from our cancer diagnosis. We don't
Hmm.
over identify, with the things that we're being told, because it's so easy, I think, to over identify with diagnosis and get caught up in what we're told about, you only have so long to live, or, oh, you know, this is the side effect of your treatment, and, oh, just all the negative stuff. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. I mean, believe me, I went into those dark places. I'm
Yeah,
sure you did too.
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, there were coping mechanisms that were going into my closet and shutting the door and screaming and
Hey,
just
so you went into the closet though, right?
yeah, I mean, so yeah, to balance that out, then it's like, some goofy humor,
Yeah,
and then the nature is that was just to feel peace. That was when I felt
right.
peace. And yeah, so I mean,
Well,
it's a spectrum.
it
So
is. It is. So, well, I hope, everybody enjoyed listening. And I think for today we tried to keep it as brief as we could. So hopefully we didn't go on too long. But hopefully some of these suggestions might help somebody out there, or just get you to think a little bit about some things you might be able to do for yourself to help you cope through this period or whatever you're going through. Whether you're recently diagnosed or you've been going through this for a while. We are here and we want to help you guys. So that's why we're doing these videos, and we're going to be out with another video within the next few weeks. And we're looking forward to it. And feel free to comment if you guys like this, and please like and share. And hopefully we can reach more people this way. And we'll have some more topics to come. So if you have a topic too that you want us to talk about and discuss, we're happy to get your suggestions as well. So okay, with that, I think we're going to go, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Okay,
okay, bye.
bye.